unboxing and examination and initial controls introduction to the basic Chinese generic DBAL or dual laser. That you're going to see these a lot on eBay. You'll see them sometimes at the airsoft stores, rarely in regular gun shop storefronts, and we're going to explain why for several different reasons. But this is generally something you're going to see a lot on eBay and from online sellers, especially organizations which use Alibaba.com as a mechanism for selling these. Fortunately, I found an importer here in the Portland, Oregon area who has these at pretty reasonable prices. So we're going to be putting these on the market, but I want to also make these videos to explain how to use it, what to expect, what not to expect, and the intricacies involved with sighting in infrared lasers. I can't cover all of that in one video, but in this introductory video, we're going to get you in the right direction on all of this. But what I have here is a blowback airsoft AR style upper. This one's for airsoft, but the rail system was real deal, and it's going to show the basic configuration you would place one of these on. This type of laser, there's about two ways you're going to do this. Now, these come with a couple of rail sections attached to it. That's the way they come. And apparently that's fashion over in China over whether or not something is tactically themed. So they like to stick rails on everything in order to show that it's a tactical themed item. That introduces us to a couple little issues though. One, with these little mini rail sections that are mounted on the side, you would think, okay, what do they mean? You put something else on the side, like maybe a flashlight or something, or a grip. Well, that's where things get a little iffy. For example, if you were to mount this on the side of a rail system, in theory, you could mount the grip below it. Now, on an AR type rifle, you wouldn't really want to do that. On AKs, where you need to rock the magazine pretty far forward in order to change a magazine, this gives you an opportunity for having an offset grip mount, but then in hard field use, you might be placing a lot of stress on components in your rail system or your handguard or the laser housing itself, which otherwise wouldn't have a lot of stress. But in theory, mounting this on, let's say, the 3 or the 9 o'clock position on a rail and then putting a handguard on it is something that would get your grip and your stuff out of the way of the way that magazine needs to swing forward when you change magazines. Traditionally, though, you're either going to mount this in the 6 o'clock or the 12 o'clock position on a rail. And one of the reasons for mounting on the 6 o'clock position is so you can put a grip on there or just have it down and out of the way. When you're looking at the height of a sight block, though, your gas block sight tower system on this and the spacing of the two lenses on a laser, realize that if it's positioned here, the two lasers are going to go off to either side of that. The height of this is just barely going to be along where your front sight is, so it's not really going to block anything off, but you would have to make sure to remove the little rail that goes on the top, or else if you've got a same height rail, it's going to start getting up in the way of your sight. But not quite. Not when this thing is in normal position. The other thing you've got to make sure of is that your rail system's capable of mounting tight. Now this is one of the, I believe, discontinued models of a night rail system, and it was missing one of the mounting screws here. Using this just as a grip mount for an AR airsoft thing where we're not really into any precision stuff on here, and a little wiggly, not that big of a deal. I'm using this for kind of close quarter speed training stuff. It's not that big of a deal, but it can get irritating. It's also, if there's any wiggle or any movement on your rail system, you're not going to be safe or right to put any kind of a sighting device on that rail system. So in order to work this on the airsoft gun right now, I either have to find one of these little proprietary little screws to tighten that thing up or change out the rail. Chances are I'm going to change out the rail and this thing will find its way on eBay. I don't know yet. Anyway, on to the laser itself. We're going to go over to controls so that we don't have to get too redundant in the other videos. The kit is going to come with everything you see here, and it's usually going to come with these little rail systems attached, and it's going to conveniently include the Allen wrenches for both attaching and detaching these little rail sections and for adjusting the laser. Now, you're going to see a pretty decently robust aluminum housing that this was machined out of. Pricing on these is all over the map, and everything I can tell, they're made out of the same parts from the same factories, but the assembly may vary. And that's where quality control and quality checking can work. Fortunately, with some of the major distributors now being located in Portland, Oregon, some of the sellers are going to be in a position to do quality control in the United States before these ship to final customers. The Hong Kong sellers will vary on whether or not they're able to do quality control prior to shipment. Now, as far as the housing goes, yeah, it is relatively robust. There's nothing implied to be waterproof about this. And one of the things I noticed is if you can see a little bit of blue inside of this, you see how there's a little bit of blue inside of that. You'll see some brass or metallic inside of this right here. And then over on this side, you're going to see a little bit of brass metallic, the back of a spring, I believe. Here's the problem. When you remove these screws, you're exposing the guts of the unit to the elements. If you put these screws back in, then you end up with these screws kind of sticking out on your laser. So if you leave the rails in place, you've also got extra crap hanging off a rifle. And we really want to avoid that. So there's a few reasons why this unit is, when you have it kind of stripped down and made a little bit more tactically feasible, it also almost becomes an indoor use only item in kind of a training environment only item, unless you do some modifications to make it a little more weather resistant. And once you do those modifications, you got to consider them to be relatively permanent. For example, taking hot glue and filling in a lot of these holes. Once you hot glue these holes in, you're done. These front ones right here are for the adjusting your XY axis of the laser itself. You know, a little spring-loaded thing, just like a scope or any other laser. You have to adjust the green and the infrared separately. There's several different reasons for it, and it's the best way you could do these is to have those two adjust separately. I'll go over the adjustment procedures in the other videos, but we'll explain. Don't lose the Allen wrench. You'll have these, and whenever you go to waterproof one of these, if you put some kind of stuff in here, you want it to be a non-hardening wax-based sealer, and soft wax is probably pretty good for sealing that up. If you put soft wax in these, that's okay too, but realize if you go to screw something into that, you'll be pushing that wax down inside of the unit where it could potentially cause damage. If you use a curing epoxy, you got to make sure that you don't use so much that it goes in there and glues that battery to the point that you can't move it again. So maybe stuffing a little wax in there and then putting a little layer of an epoxy type glue over the top to seal those up is pretty good. If you just find some other little bolts or screws to screw onto there, that works too, but it doesn't mean they're going to be all that sealed. You may still have to find some other kind of a sealer type material. Now, as far as switches and controls go, we have a little pressure switch. It took me a little while to figure out where this plugs in because all these little holes look about the same, right? Well, it plugs into this one. Now, once it plugs in, it automatically kind of activates that. We've got 3 buttons and 4 indicator lights. We've got a function button, on, off, and an IR or green laser. What this means is that our IR and our green laser cannot be turned on simultaneously. You're going to see how that kind of creates a few challenges when it comes to sighting these things in. So I can turn this on, and here we have a little indicator light that shows that our green laser is on. Now, Yeah, there you see our green laser dot. It may not be coming through the camera as brightly, but it's a pretty good, firm, bright green laser dot. If I switch over to IR, my little IR indicator comes on, but we're not going to see the dot with the naked eye because this camera isn't IR capable. I would be able to see this through a night vision device though, and that's the main purpose for this. Now we're going to use this on the green. Now we also have a couple of different functions here, one of which is that we can convert this over to flashing. That saves power. You can still use this as a sighting instrument, but it saves a little bit of power because then it's only on, 2/3 of the time because of the flash delay on there. It also gives you the ability that when you're using these to have multiple people sight weapons, by having some guys on flashing and some guys not on flashing, you would be able to tell your dots apart downrange. Now, the other thing that's going to happen here is we've got an indicator that tells us that. That helps us diagnose what's happening if something's not working the way it should. The other thing is, you'll see that we've turned this on, so there's a little blue thing that lights up. That's the button switching. So what will happen now is we've activated our pressure switch, and we can control our laser with that. And again, selecting between infrared or green. And then, of course, turn off. All lights are off, therefore it's safe for storage. These are also not particularly ruggedized or waterproof. So again, using this in an outdoor field environment is going to be a little bit risky, but we're also talking about something that retails under $200 in the United States. Field-capable infrared and double lasers are much more expensive. And that's where, as an educational and training tool, this is going to come in very useful and very cost-effective compared to, $800,000, $900,000 that you would need to spend on one that is actually field-capable, let's say, in a damp environment.